Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show. All right, guys, today I have a list here of my quarterback rankings that are updated for the 2023 season. Now, I feel like it's very important to do this video today because, well, I just haven't done my quarterback rankings in forever. So we got to figure out how we're valuing these quarterbacks going forward. So I'm going to get into all that juicy goodness. But real quick, just to let you guys know, before we get into today's video, that I have a special announcement for this channel. It's huge for the future of Crushing Fantasy Football. It's huge for the Crushing Fantasy Football community. And I think you guys are going to really like it because it's going to be hugely beneficial for you as well. So when we get to around the halfway point of this video, hopefully you guys are still here watching because you're really going to like this. And I think that it's going to provide you guys a huge edge in your league, and it's going to help me out as well. So I'm going to start right here, though, with the first quarterback on my list, and that is Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen obviously has the upside to be the quarterback one every season. He was the quarterback one 2 seasons ago. He was the quarterback 2 last year behind only Patrick Mahomes. We know that this guy is the ultimate dual threat quarterback. I mean, since becoming the dominant Josh Allen that we see today, he has been a top 3 quarterback in the NFL in rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, rushing yardage, okay? Carries within the red zone. This dude is an absolute monster with his legs. He has the upside every season to score anywhere between 5 and 10 rushing touchdowns, which is a sick rushing touchdown ceiling. We know that he can hit this ceiling every year. He had 7 rushing touchdowns last year. Look for him to do something very similar this year. There's no reason to think that this offense is going to slow down whatsoever. Led by Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, this offense is loaded with elite pass-catching weapons, and Josh Allen gets to sling Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis to rock, along with being probably one of the top 2 or 3 best rushing quarterbacks in the entire NFL. So to me, he's the easy first quarterback off the board. Next quarterback on my list is going to be Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts led the league last year in rushing attempts, rushing yardage, rushing touchdowns. The dude had 11 rushing touchdowns. This is absolutely insane. He had 3 rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl. It's just really crazy to see how often this dude carries the ball within the red zone. I have never seen a quarterback carry the ball within the red zone as much as I saw Jalen Hurts do it last year. And what we've got to keep in mind is that the offensive line is still tremendously good, and there's really no changes to this offense that would suggest that they're going to go with any different sort of game plan. Obviously, they added DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, so they've probably got a more talented back in the backfield now, DeAndre Swift versus Miles Sanders, but I don't think that that's going to cap Jalen Hurts' rushing upside at all. In fact, I think it's going to help it because with a super dynamic back in the backfield like DeAndre Swift, that's going to draw a lot of the defensive attention off of Jalen Hurts because they have to account for a super elite running back now. So I think that's going to make him even more dynamic with his legs. His ceiling is scary high this year. If he was the quarterback 1, none of us would be surprised. Next player on my list is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes probably has a better wide receiver 1 pass catching weapon this year in Kadarius Toney than he had last year. You know, he kind of went into last season with some question marks. When you really think about it, he didn't have the true wide receiver 1. A lot of people thought that the loss of Tyreek Hill would affect his overall upside. Boy, were we wrong on that. Patrick Mahomes can be the quarterback 1 no matter who his wide receiving core is, probably because he's arguably the most talented quarterback to ever play this game. I mean, he's right up there anyway. So despite really not having any true wide receiver 1s going into last season, just with Travis Kelce and spreading the ball around to his other wide receivers, he put up very good passing numbers. He led the league in passing yards. He was the only quarterback to have over 5,000 passing yards last season. And now we add who I think has the ability to be a true wide receiver 1 in Kadarius Toney. So, man, Patrick Mahomes has some decent passing weapons this coming season, better passing weapons than he did coming into last year. And he was the quarterback 1 last year. So there's no reason to think that he doesn't have the chance to repeat that again. I have Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts just barely in front of him, but Pat Mahomes, he could lead the league in passing yards and overall fantasy points at the quarterback position again, and none of us would be surprised. Next player on my list is going to be Lamar Jackson. Now, if you kept up with my channel last offseason, I was telling people to fade Lamar Jackson because he didn't have enough passing weapons. He did end up being a bust last year. He started the season very hot. Weeks 2 and 3, he had over 40 fantasy points. But after that, he didn't really display any sort of ceiling, and then he ended up going down with the injury, unfortunately. Could he have had a better season had he not missed a good chunk of games? Sure. But overall, it just was kind of a situation where he just didn't really return value based on where he was being taken. So even though I got a lot of pushback on telling people to fade Lamar Jackson last season, I was technically right. He didn't return his ADP With that being said, he's now loaded with pass-catching weapons. I mean, we've got Odell Beckham Jr., we've got Zay Flowers, we've got Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews. He has a plethora of awesome wide receiving weapons. This is one of the better pass-catching cores in the league. He's got a good running back behind him in J.K. Dobbins to draw some defensive attention off him when he decides to run the ball. So Lamar Jackson should have the tremendous upside, rushing upside that we're used to him having. If he led the league in rushing attempts and rushing touchdowns and rushing yardage, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. And now he has by far and away the best group of pass-catching weapons that he's ever had. So moving on to my number 5, and that is Justin Herbert. Now, Justin Herbert is a guy who I think is primed for a massive bounce back. I mean, look, last year he was the quarterback 11 in fantasy points, right? But he was second in the league in passing yards. I mean, this is mind-blowing. How can you be second in the league in passing yards and be the quarterback 11? Well, in nowadays NFL, having rushing upside is obviously tremendously important, and that's a prime example of why. He was the quarterback 2 as far as passing yards and was the quarterback 11. But this is not a guy who cannot run the football and present rushing upside. His first 2 seasons in the NFL, he had a total of 8 combined rushing touchdowns. So his first 2 seasons in this league, he was getting in the end zone with some pretty good consistency with his legs. So this is a very good sign. And we know that he's a 6'6", 230-pound athletic specimen. This guy can run the football. It's just that last year he had the rib injury, so they were being a little bit more careful with Justin Herbert than they normally would. So he wasn't carrying the ball within the red zone and therefore didn't really provide rushing upside, which was the only reason he didn't finish significantly higher. He certainly should have been a top 3 quarterback last year with all those passing yards, and look for him to bounce back and return to form this year as far as his rushing upside. So the sky's the limit for Justin Herbert. All right, guys. Like I said, I have an announcement that I want to make. Now, this is going to be big time for you guys. I have finally launched a Patreon. Now, you know, I've had my channel here for over a year, probably about a year and a half, and I just now made this Patreon. Now, I'm still adding to it, but it is already tremendously helpful. So, of course, if you want to go over and check it out, I've got the link listed in the description below. What I've got there is I've got my top 100 overall rankings for the season. This is going to be updated constantly as we see values and players change. So go over there and check out the top 100 rankings on my Patreon. I've also got other things like a sleepers list and sleepers broken down into rankings and tiers. It's all incredibly helpful. And so if you want to go over there and join a member, become one of my patrons on my Patreon, it's going to significantly help the channel and be huge for the future of the Crush Fantasy Football community. And more importantly, it's going to help you win money and win leagues this year in fantasy football. So I've got a ton of tremendously helpful advice on there. Go over to my Patreon. It's in the link below. Join, become a member. It's going to help grow the community, and it's going to help you profit in fantasy football this year. I'm almost certain. So, you know, if you want to gain a significant edge, go join my Patreon. It's going to be huge for both of us. Moving on to my number 6, and that is Joe Burrow. Now, guys, Joe Burrow is a guy who probably has the best overall wide receiving core in the league. You know, when you're looking at Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, there probably isn't a more talented wide receiving core out there. And Joe Burrow obviously can sling the rock like the best of them. He's got tremendous arm talent, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, playing in an offense that always has the upside to be the top 1 overall offense in the league. And he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year and was top 5 as far as rushing attempts within the red zone. So this is a dude that also, despite not being super fast, does present rushing upside just because this team is always in the red zone because they're so hyper efficient of an offense. So Joe Burrow is an awesome quarterback option this season. You can wait until the early middle rounds to draft him instead of reaching super high on guys like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. So even though I think that those guys are going to finish ahead of Joe Burrow probably is the better draft value. Next player on my list is going to be DeShaun Watson. Now, this is a guy who, you know, obviously, you know, back when he was in Houston, all 3 of his full seasons for Houston, he was a top 5 overall quarterback in fantasy points per game. So this is a guy who obviously presents awesome upside. He's got tremendous arm talent. He's fast. He's a great rushing quarterback. And now he's in by far a better system than he's ever been in. We've got a great offensive line to block for him. We've got a good running back in the backfield. We've got 3 awesome wide receivers and an awesome pass catching tight end. There's no reason DeShaun Watson shouldn't explode. He is a massive steal in this year's draft. Next player on my list is going to be Justin Fields, my quarterback, number 8. Now, Justin Fields obviously broke out last season. He was unleashed at the halfway point, and we saw what kind of rushing upside that he had, and it was absolutely crazy. I mean, this dude, I think it was week 9 last year, set the record for rushing yards in a game for a quarterback. He had something like 170-plus rushing yards in week 9. It was absolutely insane, the sort of ceiling that he was presenting. And now the Bears took an offensive lineman in the first round of the draft. We knew that they were going to bolster up the offensive line. This should help Justin Fields have even more rushing efficiency this season. So look for him to absolutely explode with his legs. We also added a true wide receiver one in DJ Moore. So the passing upside is there as well. I love the outlook for Justin Fields this season. Next player on my list is going to be Dak Prescott. Now, Dak Prescott missed a significant chunk of games last year, but we know what kind of fantasy upside this guy has. This is a guy who has a chance every season to lead the league in passing yards. That opportunity is certainly there. We've seen him have multiple seasons in the NFL with over 4,300 passing yards. This dude absolutely is just a monster as far as passing opportunity share. I mean, this dude throws more pass attempts than pretty much any quarterback in the league when he's actually healthy. So he slings the ball a lot. He has a ton of good wide receivers. We've got CeeDee Lamb. We've got Michael Gallup. They added Brandon Cooks to the offense to make the wide receiving core dynamic. There's a lot of good pass catchers in this offense. Dak Prescott has a crazy fantasy ceiling. Next player on my list is going to be Trevor Lawrence. Now, this is a guy who obviously is a tremendous talent. He's a generational talent. He's going into his third season. And now we add Calvin Ridley to his offense. I don't see how this won't be a top 5 offense in the NFL. I mean, this team, if they stay healthy, I have very good reason to believe they're going to be a top 5 overall NFL offense. Trevor Lawrence doesn't present the rushing upside that guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts have. But when it comes to passing upside, this dude could lead the league in passing yards. The possibility is certainly there. The talent's certainly there, and he's in a tremendously good offense. I love the ceiling for Trevor Lawrence this year. Next player on my list is going to be Tua Tagovailoa. Tua, he had some pretty good weeks last season. In week 2, he had over 40 fantasy points. So we've seen the tremendously high ceiling. He's got his awesome wide receiving core coming back with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. This team pretty much runs through Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They pretty much just force feed those guys a ton of targets and a ton of targets downfield. And that is how they move the ball, which is a very good sign for the quarterback because he's going to be slinging the ball a lot. This offense obviously presents a tremendously high weekly ceiling. And so therefore Tua has a tremendously high weekly ceiling. I like him as a late round quarterback steal. Next player on my list is going to be Geno Smith, my number 12. Now, Geno Smith, look, we added Jackson Smith and Jigba to the offense. He was already way better than expected last year. He outperformed expectations by a mile. And if you're one of those people in fantasy football that are like me, and you just like to stack as much talent as possible before drafting a quarterback, Geno Smith is a guy who's a perfect late round target. If you want to just stack running back, wide receiver, awesome pass catching tight end, and draft a quarterback late, Geno Smith is an awesome go-to because he's still got a high weekly ceiling, especially with all the additional pass catching weapons. So I really like Geno Smith this season as a late round quarterback pickup. Next on my list is going to be Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins gets to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. That's the best thing about him, right? He gets to throw the ball to a wide receiver who could lead the league in passing yards again, just like he did last year. He had over 1,800 passing yards. And we also added an awesome pass-catching tight end in TJ Hawkinson. So he's definitely got some weapons to throw the ball to. The rushing upside with Kirk Cousins is not there. The overall ceiling for the offense is a little bit capped just because, while it's a decent NFL offense, I don't think they have anything like the upside of like the Chargers or the Jaguars or the Bills or anything like that. So, will it be a top 5 NFL offense? No. Will it be a top 10 NFL offense? Certainly possible, but that's not even a guarantee. With that being said, Kirk Cousins is a great late-round quarterback pickup because he presents an awesome floor, and he has very few weeks where he's just a total bust. Next player on my list is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Now, most people aren't going to have Aaron Rodgers in their top 15, mainly because of the fact that he's too old and he's going to be in a new offense and everything like that. But look, Aaron Rodgers is still one of the most talented quarterbacks in this game. He's not going to present the same rushing upside as he did when he was younger. Not that he was ever an elite rushing quarterback, but, he had some, Aaron Rodgers can run the ball. He's not totally immobile. He actually moves pretty well, better than people give him credit for. He's got an awesome wide receiver one in Garrett Wilson to throw the ball to. So, let's let Aaron Rodgers sling the ball to Garrett Wilson. And, if you're drafting a backup quarterback with one of your last picks in the draft, Aaron Rodgers will be available very late, and he actually has some upside this season. So if your main quarterback gets hurt or you need a quarterback for the bye week, Aaron Rodgers is a good late-round quarterback pickup. Last and final player here on my list is going to be Jared Goff. Now, this Lions offense is going to be very good. In fact, I think the Lions are, going to be a good offense. I mean, why wouldn't they be, right? We added Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft. We have David Montgomery, who's a solid backup running back. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown as the number one pass catching weapon in the offense. This offense has some serious weapons. So an offense with talent is always good for the quarterback. And Jared Goff is a guy who, he's not really a top tier NFL quarterback as far as talent. He's more like middle of the pack, but he's not as bad as everyone likes to make him out to be. He's at least an okay NFL quarterback, maybe slightly on the under average side, but he's a good late round pickup just because he's throwing the ball to a wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown who could lead the league in passing yards. I mean, this is certainly possible. And we saw last season in a few very high-scoring games, namely the game where they played against the Seattle Seahawks, where both teams scored 40-plus points, and it was one of the highest-scoring games of the entire season, that Jared Goff does have a very high weekly ceiling. So while he's going to bust some weeks, he's also going to provide some very high ceiling weeks for you. And if you plug him in the right matchup against the right team in the right situation, and you need a backup quarterback, you can get a high ceiling performance from Jared Goff, and he can potentially win you a week. So he's a really good late-round quarterback to pick up. All right, guys, those are my top 15 quarterback rankings. Hope this video helped. Catch you later.